This is Tanya Jones Abalusi coming to you from Butterfly Effect Counseling and Consulting LLC. I hope you have clicked like and subscribed and hit that notification button so you don't miss a beat, because today we have Master Hypnotist Chris Halbohm, and he's going to be talking to us about busting up some stress. Okay, I don't know about y'all, but I know I need to learn these techniques of how to bust stress. Now, we're going to be doing 2 parts. So not only do you have 1 video, but you have 2. So come on in, let's get started. And just like the wind blows, subscribe. Hello, everyone, and we are in for a treat. We have the master hypnotist himself, Chris Halbohm. Hello, Chris. How are you? Welcome back.
Hi, Tanya. Good to see you again.
Yes, and we are here to talk about stress, and more importantly, stress busting. You're going to give us some valuable tips today on how to bust the stress.
Yep, we are.
All right. So, what kind of stress are we going to be talking about today?
Okay, so this is going to be normal, everyday stress that people go through. Not the big stuff. Not, let's say, we don't treat anxiety per se, or at least I don't. You maybe do, but we just handle basic everyday stress, even if it's big stress, but not we don't do the clinical stuff. I am not a medical doctor. This is not meant as medical advice or help, but if you do need to seek medical assistance, please do so. Always ask your doctor. But this is going to be normal stress that we're dealing with today.
That's such a good reminder to put out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who do you think this conversation's kind of for? Who is this for?
I think it's for everyday folks. And everybody wants to be special, but if we look at it like, hey, we're all working folks, we're all maybe some of the people who are watching this are struggling moms or dads even, that and one of my favorite people to work with are actually entrepreneurs and business professionals, because those folks may be under a different kind of stress. So everyday folks.
Everyday folks. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's good. So, Chris, what are some stressors that we as a society are dealing with these days?
Right. Well, there are many, and there are so many, in fact, that it's my mentor, Scott McFall, has said that with that much stress that's going on right now, it's really not possible not to be stressed with with as much change as we've been going through, especially with COVID happening. We've had a breakdown in communication. We are isolated. A lot of people are feeling alone and disconnected.
Yes.
Another factor is, of course, the things that are changing economically. The world is just changing in so many ways that and just COVID has kind of it's made it worse. So it's not possible not to be stressed, really. But hopefully, we're going to talk about some things today to reduce that.
Oh, I can't wait to get to the actual tips, because I know I need them, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
It was stressful just getting here today.
We all do. We all do, Tanya.
Yes.
Yeah. We were having the funny, setting up all this equipment stuff and goofy stuff that our heads go through as we need to actually calm down, slow down.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that today.
Yes, and I have been using that method ever since we talked last time, of really just wait a second, slow it down. But we'll get into that. Okay. So what are some signs and symptoms of stress?
Okay. Again, there are many of them. I'm going to kind of mention a few of them. Muscle tension is one that's a very popular. People say, oh, they carry tension in their shoulders, for example. A general sense of unease or sweating can be a big one. Problems sleeping, and I'm talking about excessive sweat, like in a stressful situation. but problems sleeping. One article that I had worked on a little bit recently dealt with specifically digestive issues,
Yeah.
where it shows up in the digestive system in a big way for some people. For one example would be nausea, things like that. But let's talk about mental stress for a minute: nervousness, worry, anger, general disinterest in life or things that people need to do, concentration and focus, making decisions, um, things like that. Oh, and this is very important. Please realize that a lot of people right now don't even realize that they're stressed. So a lot of folks, we don't even know that the stress is happening, because what happens is the stress goes up and up. And then we get used to that new level of uh, stress, and it becomes a new threshold. It becomes a new threshold where we think it's normal, but then more stress happens and we adapt upward to it.
Wow.
So the problem with that is that we hit a wall eventually. If we don't do something about it, it just gets worse, and we hit a wall. And that all these symptoms that we've just been mentioning, they snowball, and then the person realizes, wow, I didn't even realize I was under so much stress.
Right. And you've
So
kind of mentioned kind of how these symptoms show. Are there any more ways that they show in your mind and in your body?
sure, irritability is another one. Just short-temperedness, or not getting along with others. Maybe people, when they don't treat themselves really well, they don't treat others really well, and vice versa.
Mm.
So that just adds to the stress.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
So, Chris, why are you so passionate about helping people deal with stress?
Well, yeah, it turns out that in my young life, I was very overwhelmed, very stressed out, and my parents were overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And so I was in a very stressful household.
Mm.
It turned out that I ended up with migraine headaches once a month. And now eventually I learned to use various techniques to change that. And of course, little disclaimer here, all pain management always requires a physician referral. But yeah, I had to study how to not have the migraine. I had to study how to eliminate that. And I did. Using hypnosis, I was able to eliminate those migraine headaches. But another event happened many years ago where I was in a bad motorcycle accident, and my head went through the side window of the SUV.
Oh,
So I had a very thriving business at that time. I was seeing 25 clients a day, 80 clients a week, and very successful. But after that incident, which was very stressful, my business and my decisions became very poor, and I wasn't doing very well at all. So um, eventually, it was so bad that that I was actually in a situation where I had to go to food pantries to get my food. It was how bad it was. And it was funny. One day I was driving down the road in my you know in my Lexus, ironically, at the time,
right.
and I was eating a handful of scallions that
Mm.
they had given me at the pantry. And I realized, wait a minute, I might be overwhelmed by stress, and I might be not thinking straight. So that's when I started to really just turn to using the skills that we've been taught in hypnosis.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to really notice, hey, maybe I was wrong about certain things, and started to ask for help in a different way. And I never want anybody to go through that. That's why I'm so passionate. I don't want people, there's no reason for it, you know.
Thank you for sharing that, Chris. That was
Mhm.
you can tell that this is not just a, you know, regular old clinician provider trying to just do whatever, but there's a reason behind what you're trying to do. And so that's
Yes.
that's important. Okay.
Oh, you bet.
Can you tell us, Chris, is all stress bad? Is it always bad? Is it ever a good thing to have stress?
Right. Well, it turns out that stress is normal. And I wish we had time to go into all the cool stuff about what even it's a funny thing, even a house plant gets stressed when we turn it around so it doesn't get too pointed toward the sun. We have to turn that plant so that it learns it learns how to grow straight. I'm not explaining that very well, but house plants go through stress. Every organism goes through stress. It's normal, and it causes us to change and adapt to the world around us. We actually learn through stress. But some stress is good. Like in sports, the right zone of stress is good.
Wow.
But it's when we get distressed, that's what we need to work on.
Mm.
That's what we want to change.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I know last time we were together, you were able to bring somebody to kind of join us and kind of give their real life story. And I'm hearing that you have a treat for us today as well, as you have brought someone to share their story. And so I'm excited that we're going to be bringing him on. So let's get him in here.
All right. Yeah. This we have here with us is Clint Glazner, and he has been working on many personal goals, one of which is stress management. And he's going to kind of share a little bit about that. And hi, Clint.
Hello.
So what can you say about, can you tell us a little bit about how things were before coming into this particular program
Certainly.
with regard to stress? What were things like before?
Certainly. So just to give you a little bit of background of where I come from, I am in technology. I am an executive in a large firm, and we were going through some mergers, stitching together a couple of large agencies. And so I had gone from managing a small team that I could see their face every day to managing a team that stretched across a couple of states and even a couple of team members that are abroad rather than domestic. So the deadlines were unreasonably tight. They were rough, and we were making the deadlines. It was causing some problems with my relationships in my home. I wasn't faring well, and probably was on a track that I was going to have to step away from my role inside the organization just because the number of hours, the travel, decision fatigue was a real issue. I'm also an entrepreneur inside the organization, so we have outside facing clients that I'm making decisions on a grand scale, initiatives, developing budgets for them, managing their employees as it relates to technology. When I very first was introduced to Chris, he in turn introduced me to Scott McFall. And Scott made a funny comment that he had trained fighter pilots who were under less stress than I was at that moment. And they didn't have to be in that much stress, and neither did I. So my journey with Chris has spanned about 2 years at this point, and the cornerstone of what he has trained me with is hypnosis. In the course of my mentorship with him, he encouraged me to earn my certification for hypnosis, which I have done. That's not my primary vocation. My primary vocation is still inside the large organization that I manage. So in being able to dial back the stress that I was under at that point in time, I was able to, with additional help, to restore my personal relationships. I have grown inside the organization that I have been a part of. my leadership with my team has gotten better. Many of my colleagues have made a comment that some of them that hadn't seen me over time, because I don't see all of the colleagues, the firm is pretty large, they don't see me regularly. And there have been multiple comments about how not wound up I am, because I was a Jack Russell Terrier running with my hair on fire all the time, because I felt like that's how you accomplish goals. And so one of the really cool things that we've been able to accomplish with Chris's training is to dial back the stress, but still maintain the high level of productivity, and maintain the leadership and maintain the outside revenue that my team generates.
Awesome. Yeah. And you already answered the second question I was going to ask you, which is, well, how are things better and different? Anything you would add to that? Yeah.
My sleep has improved considerably. I do practice. So since all hypnosis is basically self-hypnosis, I'm able to leverage the techniques that Chris has trained me in to manage my day-to-day life. So part of my morning routine is to spend a little bit of time stepping through the techniques that I have adopted as my morning regime, and that helps keep me at a good level. So even whenever things come out of left field, which often is the case, whenever my stress goes up, it's not nearly as high. And one of the things that was also pointed out was my threshold for stress that I was accustomed to. For most people, it was already underwater. So I was already pegging, on a scale of 1 to 10, I was pretty much camping out at level 10. So whenever I had something that was out of the ordinary that would increase that stress momentarily, then I was already at 10 plus. And so we've been able to dial that back. So the firm that I'm taking care of, there's a little over 1,200 end users that I'm responsible for, that stretch, across several states. I'm also involved in other large organizations where I enjoy the opportunity to be CTO. And so again, budgets and crazy meetings, and it's funny. So since we've started prepping for this meeting, I've had 2 professional calls, and my kiddo's stuck in a ditch in Texas, and I'm 6 hours away. So still able to manage that and participate with this. We've been able to make some decisions on the fly, been able to leverage some resources, and I'm very comfortable with how everything's going to turn out, even though at this moment there's multiple things going on.
Mhm.
Wow, that's
Right.
impressive. Yeah, that's impressive. I think I like just scrambled trying to get out the house, you know. So I love this. This is awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Clint.
It's my
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
If you had something to say to someone that would help them to decide to do something to help themselves with this, what would you really say to them to try Would you recommend hypnosis? Would you not?
I highly recommend hypnosis. Over the last 20 years, I have engaged in a couple of different coaching programs, a couple of different systems to try to develop myself professionally. I think that by far this regimen of training has been the most successful for me. I believe it's given me some insight on how to understand whenever I'm working with other people. I kind of have a feel for the way that they sort their world, and that's helped professionally. That's helped with especially difficult conversations that must be had from time to time. And I think that there is much to be gained by seeking out, uh, especially anyone who is tied to the Scott McFall organization. And Chris has been my mentor for right at 2 years, and highly recommend his approach. Um, I know that I'm probably not unique. I'm probably, trade me out with anybody else. So, but at the same time, when he and I first engaged, I really got the impression that he was the first person to really be able to see beyond what I couldn't articulate, because I really honestly didn't know why I was in the pain that I was in. I mean, one would think it was obvious with all of uh, the professional demands that were on me, and the personal relationship demands that were on me. The real trick was learning, not, life is about 10% what happens to you and 90% how you're going to manage that. And so the tools that Chris has taught me have been invaluable, and I do highly recommend that you would seek him out. And if his book is full, because I know that his schedule is tight, his colleagues that are also a part of Scott McFall's team are all, and I've had an opportunity to spend some time with many of them, and they are all very, 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 very accomplished and very good at what they do. And in particular, Chris, if you can manage to find a slot in his calendar, you really need to.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank you so much. That was very valuable.
My pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Now, how amazing was that whole entire conversation? Please come back next week. Next Wednesday, we will continue this conversation. A special thank you to Clint for giving us his firsthand testimony on what it's like to work with Chris Halbohm and what it's like to work within the hypnosis field. So, Chris Halbohm, master hypnotist, coming back next week. He's actually going to give us 6 things we can do to bust stress. You do not want to miss this.